everyone, and welcome to Mexico Now Festival, El Podcast. My name is Ana Maria Willars, and I'm your host. I am an actress, writer, and producer from Mexico based in New York. And today I'm here with Echoes from the Borderlands. In this one-of-a-kind experimental sound work, acclaimed author Valeria Luiselli, composer Leonardo Heiblum, and multimedia artist Ricardo Giraldo will perform a powerful 1-hour-long excerpt from Echoes from the Borderlands, a sonic essay that documents the histories of violence and resilience against land and bodies in the US-Mexico border. The project is still in development and lasts 24 hours, the driving time along the border from San Diego to the Texas Gulf Coast. Echoes from the Borderlands interweaves a rich tapestry of soundscapes, music, poetry, essays, interviews, and archival material. The work also connects issues that have marked the borderlands, such as the genocide of Native peoples, nuclear testing, migration, femicide, vigilantism, human trafficking, and mass detention. Excerpts from Echoes from the Borderlands have also been presented at Joe's Pub, Harvard University, and the University of California at Berkeley, among others. This performance is presented with NYU Center of Latin America and Caribbean Studies. Thank you so much for being here today, Leo.
Thank you for inviting me.
Before we dive into the project, I wanted to ask you some small questions just to get to know you better. Who's a sound artist that inspires your work?
Well, there would be too many to mention, but I think I could say that the first one that got me into sound was probably Jeff Emerick, who was the sound engineer for the Beatles. And when I was very little, like my sister is 10 years older than me, and she had every Beatles album. So I heard the Beatles since I was born. And that's how I learned English, actually, like reading the lyrics from their songs. And since I was very, very little, I used to hear the songs and I was completely amazed about the sound of everything, the sound of the voices, how playful they were with the recording process and how they used the recording process as part of the composition of the albums, especially in their latest albums, like since Robert Soul, they started playing around with the psychedelics and also with the recordings. But for me, like Sgt. Pepper's and the White Album are two albums that marked me, and the way they play with the recordings is amazing. I think since then, and since I was a little boy, I decided that I wanted to be around microphones and sound and recording.
Yeah, the Beatles were amazing, and they really inspired a lot of musicians and artists through their work and discoveries. When was your first interaction of creating socially politically engaged artwork?
I always went to very liberal schools since primary school. So everything we did was always political. And my parents were always also very, very politically involved and very left-winged. So I think my whole life has been something that is in my mind. It's not something that I realized later in life, but always was part of my life.
And last, what is your favorite sound?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and it's very, very difficult to tell. I think it changes all the time. I think I was part of this project with Valeria Luiselli, that she was invited to the Future Library to write a book that will be published in 2114 with a paper made from the trees that were planted in Norway near Oslo in 2014. So 100 years later, they will make paper from those trees and they will print all these books that are being written every year. And Valeria wrote one this year. And I was invited to the ceremony when she delivered the manuscript that will not be opened or read until 2114. And as part of her manuscript, she did this amazing thing, which was asked everybody that was there to write down which sound they hoped it still existed in 2114. And I thought like, oh my God, what am I going to say? But when they gave me the paper, it was very easy for me. And I just wrote the whales singing. the singing of the whales. And I'm not sure if that's my favorite sound, but it's definitely a very, very, very special sound for me.
Yeah, it's a very unique sound also.
Yeah.
And now, going more into your work of Echoes of the Borderlands, throughout the sound explorations, you immerse us in a multisensorial experience whose places are sometimes perceived as mystical or not real or horrible and dry. Why is it important for the audience to feel these places and to be confronted with what it really is?
Uh-huh. I think my whole work with sound, not just with echoes, but all my life, it's about like dropping your preconceptions and dropping your judgment about something. Like you have some idea about something, and I think when you are presented with the sound of it and not like the idea or the image or the phrase about it, but just the sound of it, your mind reacts in a very different way because it takes a while for your mind to realize what you're hearing. First, you're only hearing a sound. So you don't have like a specific judgment about that sound. And many times, like I do music with sounds and like I use, for example, the sound of a mosquito and I do melodies with that sound. And you're like, oh, that's a beautiful melody. And then you realize that it's a mosquito, which is one of the most annoying sounds in the world. But you didn't have that judgment about it. So I love that about this piece. I love that people are confronted with the sound and they don't have a prejudgment about what the sound is or what the sound is representing. So I think that allows you to change your ideas about different things, about everything.
That's so interesting because it's true. Like, the more we allow ourselves to remove preconceptions about a concept or a subject, we allow ourselves to have new perspectives on it.
And we were talking about how this project is still in development. Have you discovered a path or a way that the piece informs itself as to how it should be represented and explored? And how have you discovered this in collaboration with Valeria and Ricardo?
Yes, definitely. Since we started doing this piece, we knew that it had many ways to be presented, and that for us was a strength. But it was also a weakness because it was very difficult to explain to people what this was. You know, we were like, "This is a 24-hour piece," and they're like, "Okay, so how are you going to experience it?" And we're like, "Oh, there's so many different ways you can experience it," and they're like, "Yeah, that doesn't help." Because we can imagine this piece being listened to it like on the radio, like as you drive on the border, like you just tune to different stations that, like if you are near El Paso, you tune to that station and you listen to the hour that happens in that part of the border. But we are also thinking about the piece as a performance piece that can be performed like what we're going to do in this festival. And those are shorter version of the pieces. Of course, we don't perform for 24 hours. And then we also think about an installation in a museum that can be running for 24 hours straight. And if you want to listen to the 3 a.m. segment, you have to go at 3 a.m. and listen to that segment. And we have this like romantic dream of making 24 vinyls, one for each hour, and then also can be presented online. And it can be like, there's so many things that we can do with this material, and it just keeps getting richer and richer and richer. So we really hope that, you know, people can see the potential just as Dia that is supporting us can see it. And that's why we've been able to keep working on it. But I think there's many, many ways that we haven't even thought of that we can present this piece. We also think about performances that we can do near the border where we can rehabit places that have been taken. Like there is this town called Tombstone where they do reenactments of the Wild West, and everything you see are cowboys, and that's it. If you see a woman, it's probably a hooker and it's like a minor role. And there are no Mexicans and there are no Indians. And so this project actually was born out of the idea of Valeria of like doing the missing stories, not talking about what you don't see there. Like going to there is a place called Shakespeare where they used to do reenactments, and now it's an abandoned town where we have a dream of buying this town and do reenactments, but of the missing stories, of the voices that are still there. We play a lot with the echoes that are kept in the places that are still remain from other times, and let those voices speak. Let the voices of the Mexicans, of the Native Americans, of the women that also were part of that story and is not told. And about the collaboration, it's been amazing. It's been one of the most wonderful things about this project, to learn to collaborate in the way we do with Valeria and Ricardo, because they are both, super intelligent and super sensitive and have very, very different sensitivities. And we've learned to let any idea that anybody has, like, be accepted by the group and be run, like, let's run it and let's see if it works. Like, we don't have any like, oh no, that's not going to work. Like, what are you talking about? Like that, it has taken us some time, but now if you want to do something, we do it. Like, if one of the three feels that we should do something, we do it, and then we see if it works or not. So it's been really wonderful to work with them.
Yeah, that's amazing, because collaboration is very hard, and especially when it's a very complex project that is very multi-layered, and you're still trying to find a way of how to share it and how to express it. And as you're saying, there's many ways that it could go about. And you were saying that in this process of recording everything, you spent some times in the borders. How did you manage, or what were the ways you found poignant to translate something that is so complex in history and politics and culture and race into a piece that is so specific of questions that makes us an active agent looking for the answer?
I think this would be a great question for Valeria. Because, I think we are this triangle that works very well because each of us has a different ability or a different, place of interest, I guess. Like I think I decided to study music because I don't like words so much. I don't like having to explain myself and having to convince people of something, or having to, I prefer to use music that goes directly to your soul or to your heart or to your emotions, and you don't have to say anything. So when it comes to like trying to explain things, I'm not that great, but I'll try. I think that, again, by using sound and using more abstract things about the border, we are able to make people think and feel about this subject in a completely different way that they are used to. And I think that allows them to sensitivize themselves in a different way about it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that it allows the people to relate to it different because it uses more abstract elements like the sounds.
Yeah, like for example, we talk about the physical history of the border, and we talk about how the border has been created and how every president has collaborated to build a different piece of the border. And for example, I don't think many people know that the first part of the border was built using the remains of the encampments, the Japanese encampments that they did in the Second World War. They put all the Japanese citizens into these encampments in the US. And when they were abandoned, they used that material to start building the wall. So we love this kind of like metaphors, like, we don't even tell you what that means, but I think that plants a seed of like, holy shit, like, what does that mean? Like,
wow, I didn't know that actually. And it's so complex that they're using the same materials, like historically, politically, and as you're saying, this metaphor that it carries with it.
This is a very difficult topic because it goes against institutions like governments and cartels that are known to not like confrontation and exposure. After researching and seeing this violence against bodies and land, where do you find strength and hope to keep looking for change and speaking on these topics?
Yes, when we are recording in the border, we've been to many places, and it's always a little worrying to find, border patrols or things like that. But in general, when we tell them that we are, sound artists and we are recording sound for a project, they almost laugh. Like most of the times, like helpful, and they say like, okay, you can go this way, but stay away from getting too close to the border, and if you see some illegal people, don't help them out or things like that. But in general, they've been kind. And again, I think, the response we've had from audiences where we presented these performances is so inspiring and so overwhelming. Like, people are touched in ways that I didn't expect. So I hope that, some of these people will be people that make these decisions and can make change in those levels. So I hope that in a way this ends up like rippling and having some effect in those institutions that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's the work of art, right? I mean, we do our part and we hope that has a ripple effect on others.
I just heard a quote about art that said, like, what is art good for? Like, why do we need art? And this person said, like, well, it's very simple. We need art so that everything else works.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it goes back what we were saying in the beginning, right? Like, you use this project that is presented in a different way that is mostly sound, hoping for people to have a different perspective, to take different actions. So it's all like connected. And you spend many time there. You're collecting different type of interviews and sounds from the land. And well, we had a meeting before, and you mentioned that you recorded inside the Rio Bravo, which is the lake people used to cross, with so many different archival sounds and research and conversations and experience lived that approach this phenomenon as multi-layered and eclectic and complex. Do you find a main objective, question, or feeling that you want people to take from this project?
Maybe to make them aware of the space that is surrounding us in a different way. We've recorded inside a mine. We've recorded in the parking lot of a detention center. We've recorded right next to the border with the open walls. We've recorded inside the Rio Bravo. We've recorded like in all kinds of places. And I feel that all these places have a story, and all these places have an emotion that can be transmitted much stronger and much better sonically, I think. And I've seen it happen. Like, I've seen people react to these sound pieces and they are blown away. They don't, they are touched in ways that they didn't expect. So I think that's the main objective, to allow people to drop their preconceived ideas or preconceived notions that they may have about a subject or about a place or about something, and to just be able to let go and to be surprised and to have a different opinion or a different emotion about something that you didn't have before.
Thank you so much, Leo, for everything that you're sharing with us and for the work you are creating with Valeria and Ricardo. Before we go, do you have any social media that you want people to follow, or where can they follow Echoes from the Borderlands?
Yeah, Leo Heiblum, it's on Instagram and Twitter or X. And Echoes from the Borderlands has also an Instagram account, as does Valeria Luiselli and Ricardo Giraldo.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm so excited to see Echoes from the Borderlands at the Mexico Now Festival from November 20 to November 24 at the Chelsea Factory.